Trying to find something new. We are live. Hello, everyone. Just give us a minute. Jump on, say hello. This ain't right. It's Jump on, say hello if you're there. So excited for tonight. Jump on, say hello in the chat box below. I'm going to introduce you to these amazing ladies in just a moment. Playing by the same hand, how to find something new. I can't work it out what it's all about. I will live my life for you. This ain't real, this ain't true, this ain't what I signed up to. Hey, Kelsey! It's no good, no good. I've been here for too long. Love this song, Taylor. So you've probably seen tonight to that expression. So express yourself tonight. I'm in my favorite jacket. Woo! Oh, that song gets me pumping.
Love it.
I love it. So we are live. Now I'm just going to scroll across. We are live to my Facebook page. Where are we? I can't see myself. There I am. All right. Hi, Nicole. How are you? Lovely. Nicole's on Facebook. Oh, got the blood pumping. Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Emily Kate. Tonight is exciting. We have two amazing guests tonight. Now, these conversations are about exploring topics that you get to be consciously aware of. And I have two amazing people that I've recently become really close with. So you've got Taylor here. Taylor, give us a wave. Now, you'll hear a lot of sharing from us tonight. Basically, Taylor, she is a self-expression sexual coach. I'm going to say a sexual coach because it just sounds so juicy. And Taylor, she really goes to work on abolishing shame from the bedroom. So she has her own programs and she has her own channels. So if you don't know Taylor, I suggest going over and checking her shit out because it's amazing. So thanks for being here. I thought she was the perfect person to have this conversation about shameful expressions, you know, things that we shame in society. So I'm so excited that you're here. And I know it was really last minute, but I'll get some sharing in a minute. And we got Marilyn. So Marilyn runs Pillars of Respect. Is it Pillars for Respect? Of Respect?
No, it's Pillars of Respect.
Of Respect. Marilyn runs Pillars of Respect, so having conversations about love, connection, and respect. And she has her own page as well, her own group. She has, how many people are in that group now?
115.
It's amazing. So obviously there is, you know, that's all about having conversations about love, connection, and respect as well. So it's another platform where you get to go and explore these kind of conversations. Now, again, Conscious Conversations is all about exploring topics. It's not about arguments. It's not about, I don't like to use the word discussion or not discussion. What is the word?
Debate.
Debate, yeah, I don't like that word because we're not debating on who's right, who's wrong. This is really just a place where we get to fully fucking express our humanity. And those of you that get really offended by swearing, it's probably not going to stop because that is my expression. And I'm not apologizing for it. Sorry, Taylor swears too.
So do I.
I love it. So, yeah, we're all swearers. If you don't like swearing, I totally get it. It's not in the listing for some people, but it really is an expression. It's just another expression in language. So I'm so excited about tonight. Now, let me just say a little bit about our topic. Tonight's topic is shamed expressions. Now, what I mean by shamed expressions is exactly that, expressions that we shame in society. And we're going to just dive straight in and talk about, hi Chloe, we're just going to talk about and discuss amongst ourselves and really kind of get to the depths of where this all came from, where it shows up in our own lives. And if you're watching, I really want you to comment and share, your own experiences of your own expression being shamed. If you have any stories about that, I'd love to hear them. I'm going to be sharing some stories about times that I've been shamed in the workplace, in relationships, and this is a part of everyday life for most people. So we're going to talk about it. Now, because I didn't give you guys heaps of credit, Taylor and Marilyn, do you want to share a little bit more about yourselves and why you wanted to be on the live tonight? Taylor, you can go. Yeah.
All right. Just shamed expression. Like, I am out to banish shame from our bedroom, but also from our hearts and from our lives. And I see dealing with shame as a way to really deal with human trafficking, which I'm really out to impact that space. And I'm all about creating a space where we are free to express ourselves and we don't have to feel ashamed about what we've said. And yeah, there's things that people say that maybe they shouldn't say, but being able to deal with that without shaming each other and being able to get to the root of why maybe we offended someone, why that's there for people, and really just banishing the whole idea of shame. So I was like, that's me.
Yes. I knew you would be perfect for this conversation. And you're going to love some of the things that I have a couple of questions. I usually have like a briefing sheet, right? To make sure that I'm on track and that the conversation really is an exploration of something. And so I always am out to ask like really juicy questions. And one of them is, where does shame come from? So I can't wait to hear, your version of that answer. Because we all have our own little insight into that answer. Now, Marilyn, do you want to give us, why are you here?
Yeah, so I came because pillars of respect, there's the conversations for love, respect, and connection. But pillars of respect is all about ending all violence in all relationships in any context. Just ending all violence to cause zero deaths from violence in relationships in any context in Australia by 2030. So shame and violence are so connected that if we can't as humans have a conversation about it, and I just think of all the things I've kept hidden because of shame. So it was a no-brainer. Come on and talk about shameful expressions. Well, hello.
Yeah.
How long have you got?
We got until 8 p.m. And I know that there's a lot to talk about in this conversation because even I am noticing in society right now the amount of suppression happening with people want to really express what's going on for them. And there's such a restraint by not wanting to say the wrong thing that might offend someone. And, as everyone knows, we've kind of turned into a society of being offended by everything. So that's not the aim or intention for this conversation. This is an exploration. So anybody that jumps on, we want to hear from you as well. This is not a place to be shamed. This is a place to just discover and explore, why is there this conversation in society that you can't have an opinion? Why are opinions so threatening to others? Having an opinion, having a belief. So, I'm excited. I'm really excited. So first, let me just say, I just want to share actually. So I've experienced a lot of shame in relationships, and I know, Taylor, this is probably how you got to where you are with the work that you do, but I know in relationships, there's shame, especially with emotions. So I find that if I'm someone because I'm someone who is very like a people pleaser, right, is the best way that I can describe it. And so I notice a lot of shame comes up for me when I want to express what I want in a relationship with another person, or even if I just want to express frustration. And what I find is I've done all of this work. I've done like 10 years of self-development, and I've read books and books and books, and I've had multiple conversations, and I've done heaps of work, right? And now I still have relationships where I don't express myself because I don't want people to feel shame because they can't express themselves as, the way that I can, for number one, and that my expression won't be, it won't be accepted. So there is even just shame in the idea that my sexual expression and, expressing what I want will be shamed. So most of the time, we're not even expressing ourselves. We're just predicting that there's going to be shame, so we don't express ourselves in the first place. Is that kind of like how you got into your work? Because I know that my brain was like, you should just become a sexuality coach. For so long, I was like, because I have friends always coming to me with shame around, feeling very vanilla in the bedroom. And I have no shame expressing to them. But when it comes to intimacy, that's where I fall short. So, yeah, at least that's where I notice being shamed in expression.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people experience shame around the bedroom. A lot of our identities are tied up around performance and who we should be and expectations and what we think the other person is expecting and how many partners we should or shouldn't have had and how much experience we should or shouldn't have. All of that really shows up in that space because when you get your kid off, it becomes vulnerable, right? You can't help it. Whereas in other situations, the vulnerability isn't innate. I guess people feel exposed and open and vulnerable when they get into the bedroom with someone in a way that they don't in other relationships, in other conversations. And all of a sudden, all of this shame and these feelings come up and we're not sure and we don't know what we're doing, but we can't tell anyone we don't know what we're doing and all of that. But my first experience of shame was around the expectation to be humble or polite. So that
interesting.
In my past, when I'm really young, where the adults were telling me I was cute and I just said, I know. Because, sky is blue, the cars do this, cows make this noise, you're cute, I know. And then it was like, you can't say that.
Yeah.
You have to say thank you. You have to be polite. And that was just shame being put on me because someone had experienced shame that I would say that way.
So you would
feeling like rude. Yeah. That's my very first experience of shame. And it's that I didn't do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that you didn't say what that person wanted to hear.
Yeah.
How they thought that you should have responded.
Yeah, and it's that identity, right? So this was an incident with my mum, right? Really harmless, right? Teaching me to be a polite child, a polite human, a nice human. And she experienced this shame, and her identity is obviously tied up a little bit with how her daughter behaves. And I think it's a natural reaction and a really great lesson to learn how to be polite. But internally, I was like, I'm bad and I'm disappointed and I'm upset and I should have known better.
Yeah. Yes, I can hear myself in that. Yeah, definitely. And even now, it's not that I can't take compliments, but when someone gives me a compliment, I want to, someone says to me, shit, you are so beautiful, today. Your hair is so amazing. And I know it is because I spent an hour and a half doing it. And instead of going, I know, I spent an hour and a half doing it, I go, thank you. I really appreciate, that humble nature, like you said, being, that's so nice of you. And it has nothing to do with me receiving, but everything to do with them feeling like they had, that they had made a difference to the way that I feel about myself. Isn't that funny?
So my natural response for so long was to shame the person. So I would be like, and quite often this happened in nightclubs or whatever, like, oh, you're so beautiful. And I'd be like, how dare you? I'm more than just a pretty face. Rah, rah, rah. Don't you know what I'm studying at university? Blah, 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 blah. And just like push that shame back out there on them.
Yeah. Yeah, I had friends that would do that for me. We'd be in a club. Kelsey's like, fuck, I like you, Emily. I like you too. You're cool. So me and my friends would be in a club too. And I constantly had people coming up to me trying to dirty dance me. And, I have really good looking friends too. So we'd be in the middle of the dance floor. Me, a model, as hot as I am, surrounded by models of women. My friends are literally, most of them have been models through their teen, young adult years. And we're on the dance floor and we love sexy dancing, We want to slut drop it. We want to shake our booties. We want to get our titties out, all that fun. We just want to get nasty. It's an R&B club. We want to get nasty and we want to have fun. And what I find was happening though is what we were, we're getting on the dance floor. A lot of fun was happening. And, instantly men, even women would come up and they'd, be wanting to touch us, wanting to be a part of our group, getting very close, but very intense, like, oh, you're asking for it, And so my shame was in wanting to be not, I didn't want to come across as a jerk. And instead of being like, sorry, I'm not interested, please move on, and very straight and direct, I got really awkward. And I would be like, oh, they must be harmless. They're just here to have fun. And so I'd dance with them, but then I'd feel really uncomfortable because they would be like, oh, this is an invitation. And so they'd be like sliding into the,
with friends, like
oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's what it was like. And you're like, she's in trouble.
Yeah. Well, a friend of mine has like, when she stares at you, it's like, back the fuck off. She is going to start a riot. She's beautiful. And the moment that she has that stare, people are like, oh, don't mess with her. And she'd be that friend for me. But still, there was still a suppression in me being able to say, I'm not interested. And there was so much shame behind me being able to say, I'm really uncomfortable right now. Can you please back off? But also what I noticed was because I wasn't able to express that I wasn't interested and that I had shame about being uncomfortable. It's like, he's just dancing. He's just trying to have fun. Why am I uncomfortable? And I constantly, and I know I do this to myself, right? I'm constantly testing myself. And by testing myself, I mean, I see how far I let people take it before I put a line in the sand. And therefore I'm testing other people too. And, you know, most people end up experiencing shame because I don't have boundaries. I find that really interesting because in our minds, it's the other way around. So
Can I speak to that, Emily?
Yeah, jump in, yeah.
It's interesting that you say like shame in relation to boundaries. From my perspective, I don't think from my experience, it's not that at all. And all that you and Taylor have just said about, there's this shame around owning who we are in this country. I can't tell you how many times I've been cut down because I've just said, it's like this for me. I know I'm this. Even like there's massive shame around anger. You can't even speak it. How can we deal with ending human trafficking and ending violence in relationships if we can't even talk about anger and the shame around having anger? And we can't just fully own who we are. Like, you shouldn't have to suppress yourself in a nightclub. I shouldn't have to have been called like slut shaming and all the other stuff that goes on and the stuff that goes online. Like, no, people should be allowed to have full expression and not deal with a label from somebody else's judgment and opinion when they have no idea what that person's gone through to get to that point,
Absolutely. It's a double-ended stick. It really is. It's a double-ended sword, I should say. It's like if you're too much of something, you're going to shame yourself and you're going to shame others. I mean, tall poppy syndrome, I don't think it exists in Australia. I think it exists everywhere. We have our own version of it, but other countries I've been to, absolutely tall poppy exists. Absolutely. And friends that I know, I have a lot of friends in different countries, and their cultures, a lot of culture is set up for people to be able to fit into a mold. The moment someone doesn't fit in, it's like, what's wrong with you? There's shame there for standing out. So Kelsey says, because there is shame around emotions, because our emotions get ignored by is and others. I'm not sure I understand the last part, but I kind of get what you're saying.
And others.
Sorry?
So we ignore our own, I think it means we ignore our own emotions.
Yeah. Well,
I think
it's ignored, but I like to use the word suppressed because most of the time we know how we're feeling and what we want to say, and we don't.
Yeah.
I think Marilyn touched on a great point there about the anger.
Yes. Yeah. It's good.
Go on, Emily.
You're all right. So I was just about to say, you took us into a good segue because this really is about emotional suppression through shame and as a society. And when I say as a society, I don't look over there at, those people, they tell, they're the ones making me uncomfortable for feeling sad or being angry, because that would alleviate or take away the responsibility happening over here with me. So you see, even on a dance floor, when there's a slimy weirdo like grinding on me and I'm not saying to him, back off, because that's okay too, right? These are my boundaries. It's like, back the fuck off, man. I just want to, grind you over here by myself. So there is responsibility for me over here to manage my shame when I'm experiencing not wanting someone else to be shamed. So it's all entwined, but basically it all comes down to, oh, my computer's being funny. It all comes down to emotional suppression. Why are there some emotions that we suppress in humanity more than others? Why are things frowned upon like anger, like frustration, sadness? Anxiety is something that's like, oh, what's wrong with you? You need help. And I want to look at that because I look at that over here with me, and I'm someone who had anxiety for a long time. I experienced anxiety in my body, and the way that I experienced it was, and I didn't realize at the time, I wasn't present to it, I wasn't conscious to it. But anxiety was experienced for me as always being afraid of what people would think of me, always being afraid of judgment, this constant fear that I was going to say or do something wrong that would have someone else upset. And so instead, what I would do is suppress everything that I wanted to say and everything that I wanted to feel to make sure that I didn't upset others and that I wouldn't have to deal with conflict. Now, that kind of manifested in my body and really turned into an eating disorder, because I would experience so much overwhelming nausea that I'd have to sip water to keep down the throw up. And for a really long time, I never went anywhere unless I had a bottle of water. Even on a dance floor, by the way, I'd always have a drink in my hand. And it wasn't because I was a drunkie. It was because I was constantly trying to suppress that feeling of wanting to be sick. And a lot of the time, pretty much every day, twice a day, I would throw up. And what I realized was, you know, being someone who wasn't able to express their emotions, like pretty much what I was doing was trying to prevent experiencing shame. And I used to call it embarrassment. I didn't want to be embarrassed, didn't want to embarrass myself. And I remember my nan saying that a lot. Don't embarrass yourself. You know, fly under the radar. And so I never created anything that I wanted to create.
I really relate to that, Emily. I'm a very, very emotional person. And I had a coach that I had on the self-expression and leadership program actually tell me that she could see that I was like a caged animal. And I'd put this cage up to protect people from my anger and my sadness and because I didn't know how to let it out without I used to say it's like seeing red, because I would suppress it until I couldn't, and it would just like explode. And then after the fact, I would have said things and I wouldn't even remember I'd said them, because it was just this, like, my brain went into fight mode.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Mine, when it came out, looked a bit different, but the experience of that, and it's interesting you said like a caged animal, because there's a saying I have, we trap ourselves in our own minds and our own bodies. And we do that by trapping our emotions, because emotions are, you know, energy in motion, right? A lot of people, you probably hear that a lot, energy in motion. When the energy isn't able to be in motion and we make it wrong and we suppress it and we build shame around it, we've pretty much trapped it inside of our own bodies.
Yeah, I can relate to that too, like with what you've both just said, because I remember very early on in my career, somebody called me aggressive. This older woman called me aggressive at work, because all I did was ask questions, because I wanted to do my job well. And I asked them in a particular tone. Don't ask me what the tone was at the time. I was a bit younger then, right? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm asking you a question and you're shaming me for asking you a question so I can do my job properly, because I was a nurse at that point. So I was like, well, I want to make sure I'm doing my job properly so I don't kill anyone, so I don't lose, you know. But yeah, I was labeled aggressive. I'm like, how dare you be aggressive and speak your mind? And it's not just been, that was the first instance, you know, every time. And even how women, like, I don't know, you see like the vilification of female and aggression and the shame with that with women, and then you're you know, you've been a slut, you're too fat, whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like a minefield of like, let's not discuss this.
Yeah.
Because it's all, to me, they're all acts of violence. Anytime you can't express yourself fully.
Mm.
So I'm with you like 100% all the way.
I love that you said that. Someone, when I was in my 20s, I'm still in my 20s. When I was in my early 20s, when I was 21, I think it was, someone had said to me, "Oh, you know, your clothing's really short. Does that not make you uncomfortable?" You know what I did? I was such a rebel. I went and bought this really tight red dress that had holes like that come down the side, like it was beautiful, and fishnet stockings that had butterflies in them, and really sexy like stiletto black shoes, and I wore that shit everywhere. I fucking wore it to the shops. I loved it, and. And this was like this. I remember having moments like that. I don't know if you've both experienced this. Kelsey said we've all experienced shame. It's so untrue. It's so true, because I even know that in my life I can remember moments where I was like, fuck, I don't want to be someone who's affected by shame. And knowing that I am, so I'm like rebelling against that, you know, that belief system. And so even one winter, I was hanging out with my boyfriend and his best friend, and it was freezing. We were at the Gold Coast, and it was really windy. And I was like, I'm going to fucking go swimming, because I'm, you know, screw society. Screw what society says. I'm going swimming in winter. It's the beach. The sun's out. I got into my bikinis, went down to the beach, got sick because it was so cold. It was so cold, but I was like, screw this. I just want to, you know, and so instead of being able to find an access to expression, I almost do the opposite, and I rebel against what society, it's funny we say society like it's a person, but what I think society, other people, how I think that they think I should exist and how I should behave in the world. And when it comes down to it, it's actually how I think other people think that I should behave. Because no one's telling me that I can't go swimming in winter. Actually, my boyfriend and his best friend were like, I dare ya. And still, I was like, you know, I'm going to get you, society. But really, it was me experiencing about shame. And even like, I just want to point this out too, tonight, there aren't many people watching this live. The moment that people see the word shame, I mean, it's evident, right? The moment a lot of people hear the word shame, they go, that sounds heavy. I don't know if I can deal with that. They might not even notice that they're saying it to themselves. I mean, Kelsey's jumped on. She jumps on every live. Thank you so much, Kelsey. And for interacting as well. It's not an easy topic to talk about because we're trying to pretend that we don't experience it. But I think that's why it still exists so much in our society, within ourselves, because we spend most of our time trying to resist that it actually exists.
Are we ashamed that we feel shame?
Sorry, what did you say?
Would you say we're ashamed that we feel shame?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're told we shouldn't give a fuck what anybody thinks, but really deep down we're like, oh, I hope you like me.
Exactly. I mean, I wore this bloody thing jacket tonight. You know what I mean? I'm talking about shame, and you know what my internal dialogue said? You got to look really good. You got to look really good. I
put lipstick on.
Yeah. And my internal dialogue is like, if you're going to talk about something that heavy, you got to look nice. You got to look happy. You got to wear bright colors. You got to uplift the vibe, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. Pointing it out though, and being aware of it and exploring it and being the observer of it versus the person stuck in the mud of shame I think that's where the juice is.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we think shame actually exists over there with other people, or is it only over here with me?
It's over there with you.
With
It's
me.
only over here with me. What I'm seeing is all of this, like, I can yell at someone and say, how dare you shame me? But the only time I've ever been shamed by anyone, it was because they felt shame first.
Mm.
So I'm thinking where this has come from is I had someone shame me because I wasn't interested in being in a relationship with him.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
he shamed me, and it was like, who was I to not want a relationship with him? And it was like other layers, like I'm a woman, that's all we want is relationships, and he's a certain type of man, and there was some cultural differences, and I think he was a bit of a babe somewhere else, and I was like, you're not my type, dude.
And so he was experiencing shame and rejection.
Yeah, and then he shamed me for having a type, or I wasn't interested in him and all of that. And I'm like,
yeah. And
Yeah.
I've experienced shame, you know, like in that sense. I've said no to someone that I've said no to plenty of people that I haven't been interested in, right? And saying no to someone in that scenario for me is so confronting, because it's like I instinctively already know there's going to be shame. So I prepare myself for it and I try to get around it. You know, I try to be like, yeah, I'll go on a date with you. And then I go on a date with someone and I'm like, wow, I'm going to be murdered because this person is really not okay. And I put myself in situations with people that I instinctively know will never work with in a relationship. And then to avoid shame, I put myself into scenarios that then the shame is experienced deeper, because I can't be someone who stands up for myself and what I want. So then
that's why we tell people we have boyfriends when we don't.
Yeah.
I have a boyfriend. And it's like, no, I just am not interested. That's okay. But for some reason, and I've talked to my girlfriends about this so much, and women, you know, twice my age, and it's this, I have a boyfriend. And I read a feminist poem about this, and I can't remember how it went, but it was basically like, I either have to tell you I'm gay or that I have a boyfriend to get you to leave me alone and take me seriously, that I don't want your attention.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I'm like, leave me alone, they come back. If I'm like, go away, they come back. If I tell them I'm into girls, they might still even come back and be like, oh, we'll bring your girlfriend. And then finally it's like, I have a boyfriend. And even that sometimes is like, oh, well, there's no ring on your finger. Yeah. Where is he tonight then? And it's like...
Yeah, like Kelsey said, it's deflection, really. You know, it's like, I feel shame, so I'm going to make you feel bad. And we even do, you know, even in saying I have a boyfriend is a way to avoid feeling shame or experiencing shame. And I've had similar situations. I don't know about you, Marilyn, but I've said no to a man and he's called me a slut before, and I just don't engage in the conversation. And even recently, you know, I recently deleted all my dating apps because they don't empower me. The conversations being had on dating apps, they don't empower me because it's not what I want. I don't want something casual. And, you know, recently I said that to a guy. I said, I had been talking to him for a while. He's very forward, very flirty. Come over to my house, baby. And I keep saying, look, no, that's not what I want. But keep keep him on the dating app. Like I haven't blocked him or anything. And so it was like daily this guy was relentlessly sending me messages. And I tried all these different angles. I tried to be funny with him. Yeah, you don't give up, do you? Ha, ha, ha. But actually experiencing real disrespect and discomfort. And instead of saying that, I had just been brushing it off. And so I got responsible for it. And I messaged this guy and I said, look, I've been an asshole. I haven't really given you it direct, but I'm not interested in this relationship. We're on different pages. You want casual sex and I want a relationship, a committed relationship with one person.
Yeah.
And straight away I sent that message and I was like, wow, why didn't I say that 2 weeks ago? Was my first thought. And then I got a response that said, well, good luck with that. And so there was shame in being able to express what I really wanted. And I didn't experience the shame because I had my own back. You know, but before then, the shame looked like trying to avoid saying that.
I also
This is
think
what I wrote my ebook about. Just a shameless plug, but I'm like, means I'm on the right track.
Yeah. What were you saying, Marilyn?
Sorry, Marilyn.
I think it's really interesting because I'm getting a bit sick of the platitudes we all get. You know, you're amazing, you're this, you're that, you're like, people cannot just be straight and direct with each other. I speak a second language and people are direct in my second language. They're far more direct than people are over here. And so we're ashamed to be even authentic and real with each other. Like, for starters, there's so many wrong town things about those examples you've just said, ladies, in relation to respect and violence. I don't, you know, and we're not having a conversation about that. But, you know,
next week
that'll be something I'll be talking about. But the shame that we can't even just go, mate, I'm sorry, no. Or like I tell and I've been doing this for years. Don't honey, babe, love, beautiful me, baby me. Don't call me any sweet pet internet names, especially in the workplace. Even more if you're in a dating app. The only person that can call me that is a guy who I've said, yes, you can call me that, right? So I get told I'm a stuck up, aggressive, fat, middle-aged bitch because how dare I fucking assert myself, excuse my language, but how dare I fucking assert myself and go, no, sorry. And then what, I should feel shame because I've stuck a boundary up. And there's a whole world of stuff that's happened in my life, and I dare say it's happening in a lot of people out there, that's not spoken about.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't want this to take away by the way. I would say I'm an advocate for full expression. Yeah, and Kelsey's right. People like to fluff around, fluff the fuck about. And I am one of those people. I, for a long time, have been a fluffer. I'm not going to deny that. I have full responsibility for the fact that I get confronted by context. And shame is confronting. Not wanting anyone else around me to experience shame and not wanting to experience shame myself. So I have been known to fluff. But, you know, into what you're saying, I am an advocate for full self-expression. Now, I don't want to have this conversation be people not being able to express themselves online, especially if you are on a dating app. If what you want is sex, say it. Express it. Yeah. Look, I'm on here because I just like casual sex. Great. That's not what I'm into, but, you know, thank you for letting me know and being honest. I had a guy, it was so refreshing. He messaged me and he said, you look really beautiful, but I'm just letting you know, I don't think we're looking for the same things. I'm just after something casual. I've just come out of a really, you know, awful relationship and I just want to have fun. And I said, I really respect that you shared that with me, you know, and take care.
I had a guy, I met him out and we planned to have a second date and it all didn't work. And then we met up out another time and he ended up messaging me a few days later when I was talking about catching up with him. And he was like, look, I don't think like this isn't what I'm wanting. We're looking for different things, blah, blah, blah. And like, if you don't reply to this, that's fine. And I wrote back and I was like, I want to be your friend. Can we be friends? Coffee? Because I was like, thank you for just telling me and not just like not replying or not just whatever it is you want to do. Like, just be upfront and say this. Why not?
Yeah. And it's required from both parties. Yeah, Kelsey said, you know, it's been fun being shamed for being angry and tiny. We're going to roll into that next, Kelsey. I really do want to look at shame around anger and frustration. I have a really good something to share with you. And it's okay if this goes over. If both of you can stay longer, I know that this conversation's amazing. And anyone that is watching or anyone that does replay will get a lot of value out of this information. Yeah, Kelsey, oh my God, my recent experience with a guy was amazing. Turns out I'm still gay. I love it. You crack me up. You crack me up. I even experienced shame around my sexuality because I like women too. And I was at work and I said to one of the older employees at my last job, she's great. This is nothing against her. But I even noticed experiencing it as shame. And this comes back to what you were saying, Taylor. It is over here with us because people say things or do things and then we get offended by them and then we experience shame. So that's an interesting concept, by the way. If you were to sit with that, people say and do things to you and it doesn't matter what they say or do, you are going to articulate it the way that you it's kind of like you've already set yourself up for that experience. So I said to her, I went on a date this weekend. She said, what was his name? It wasn't an issue. It was just, it was just like the way she said it, the words that she had said, I could have been offended. Instead, I was like, no, I like men and women. There's no shame in that. Now, if I really did have shame around my sexuality, I probably would have experienced what she shared as being shamed. But because I'm not shameful of those experiences and my sexuality and my belief around sexuality, then I didn't experience shame and I chose not to experience it. I chose not to be offended by what she said, but rather use it as an educational, humorous lesson for her. So absolutely shame exists over here with us, first and foremost.
I wonder too, Emily, how much of it, right? Because it's not the only emotion we can't feel into, but if we as humans can't be with ourselves and our emotions and the emotion of shame, how the hell are we supposed to have relationships with other people? I'm like, man, people have relationships. Maybe that's why I've been single forever, because
next level.
I'm dealing with all my shame of all the shitty things I've done in relationships, right? And all the things I'm not proud of. Yeah.
So last night I had an experience. So basically, I'm just going to share. And Ben, if you don't want anyone to know this, I'm telling them. No, I'm just disclaimer to my partner. So yesterday we had a nap. And if Mum is watching this, just tune out now. Yesterday,
you hear that, Mum? Tune out.
Oh, Mum.
I love it.
Or Dad or Grandma or whoever doesn't want to hear about my
This is
life.
Taylor, fully expressed family. So just a heads up, mute it now for the next couple of minutes. Now you have full permission.
Yeah, we had a nap, and then I wanted to have sex. And we had sex, and then we had a nap, and then I wanted to have more sex, and he just wasn't feeling like it. And it was totally fine in the moment. And actually afterwards he said, are you okay? Because I have a few hang-ups around sex that we won't get into. But he was like, are you okay? That's not that I don't want to have sex with you. I just don't feel like it right now. I've got to go home and whatever. And I was like, I'm good. And I was good. And then I got into bed last night and I was like, why doesn't he want to have sex with me? Now, keep in mind, we had sex, and then we had a nap, and then we just didn't have sex again. I got into bed and I'm like, who can I talk to and work out how to make him want to have more sex with me? Now, I have a history of eating disorder. So then I went, if I was skinnier, he would have wanted to have sex with me. And all of this. And I couldn't sleep. And I'm like going crazy in my head. And I messaged him this morning. And anyone that's also a Landmark graduate will understand this. But I said, my machinery went nuts last night. So basically, when I say that, I mean all of my thoughts that I have all the time that repeat themselves like on repeat, happened last night. And he was like, what happened? And I went to text him. And then I was like, nah, this is not going to be received well. So I called him and I was like, I just want you to know that, yes, I was fine. And then I got into bed and I was like, why doesn't he want to have sex with me? There's something wrong with me. Oh my God.
You know, I think that's great that you shared that. And, you know, Kelsey's just shared too. I actually had someone check in with me after rejecting me when I put myself out there in regards to sex. It was a really nice experience. It is nice when someone can be direct with you and check in on you but that's the thing too, right? Marilyn, you're like, how do people be in relationships? Communication is a huge thing, but knowing someone's triggers and looking at triggers for shame. What are some things that trigger people inside of shame? Number one is usually, you know, for Taylor, it looks like triggers around being rejected, especially sexually. For me, I know one of my triggers for shame is when someone's giving me constructive feedback and I'm like, and I thought that I was doing really well. I get overwhelmed with the experience of shame. Like I've really screwed up and there's something wrong with me and I'm not doing it the way that it should be done. And so I experience shame. So knowing someone else's triggers for shame is, I think, you know, why we have these kind of conversations, because they surface for us what really actually happens when we experience shame. Where is it coming from? And it will usually come from somewhere in the past where someone said something to you and you attached it to this, you know, experience of shame. And I know for me, my experience of shame in relationships and expressing myself comes from when I was in year 7, right? I had a guy that I was totally in love with. Oh my God. His name was even Trent Hartley. Hartley. Like, come on, man. He had the most beautiful smile. Whew. He was drop dead gorgeous, this guy. And he had just started coming to school. And I was told by the teacher to show him around. You know, I was very excited about that. And he was really lovely to me. And I have 4 brothers and I know what boys are like. And I was like, this guy's different. He's so nice. And he's a gentleman. He had a lot of respect and he opened the door. This is year 7, right? So this guy, you know, he's really been taught well. And anyway, within a week, not even a week, probably a couple of days, I was in love. I was absolutely in love. And I wrote him a love letter, which was a poem, signed it by me, covered it in love heart stickers, signed, sealed, and delivered in person at lunchtime. And, you know, I'd given this guy this letter, which was a poem. And, oh, my God, I had never been so excited. From before that moment, can't remember having ever experienced embarrassment or really putting myself out there and experiencing shame before this moment. And I remember it because I just remember feeling like there was something wrong with me. So I'd given him this letter. I'd come back. It was lunchtime, and he was standing in front of a crowd of people that you would call like the popular kids. And he was reading this letter out loud to all of them and a couple of other people. And he catches me watching, and to fit into this crowd has ripped up my letter in front of me and told me it was a joke, and everyone just started laughing and stomping all over the pieces of paper. I was so embarrassed And I remember even trying to think of ways to pretend like it was a joke, that I didn't really feel that way. I was just joking to see how he would react and trying to get myself out of the experience of shame that I felt. And so I know that that was my moment. And that was the moment that I started to really suppress when I felt something for another person. Suppress it, like actually being able to share those feelings and thoughts. And I think everybody has a moment. It might not look like that, and it might be a couple of moments as well. That was probably one of the many. But every single person has a moment like that, and in that moment, they decide there's something wrong with them. And so shame is directly attached to there's something wrong with me. And so therefore, there's shame. There's like shame for this fundamental nature of human. And that's where anger and sadness and frustration comes in too. It's like these fundamental expressions of being human are being shamed because someone said that we shouldn't be this way. And even we tell ourselves we shouldn't be this way. We shouldn't get angry. We shouldn't be frustrated. We should be on a high vibrancy always. It's absolute poppycock, people.
Poppycock? That's being a bit kind.
It's stupid. The notion that you're someone who can exist on a high vibrancy always and constantly be positive and never have really experienced shame, and you know everybody else around you is just a fluffy duck. It's bullshit. It's delusional. Your humanity expressed is all of it. Is the happiness, is the joy, is the sadness, it's the anger, the frustration, even the shame is a part of your humanity. Isn't that freeing to know? I get so freed up. And I keep asking the universe, bring people to me and allow them to just fully express themselves in their humanity. Don't wait until you feel good. Do it now. And, you know, I teach this to some of the young boys that I mentor. My brother, right? He had a weekend, and he might watch this later or not. My brother, one of my brothers, he has depression and he drinks a lot, especially when he's confronted. And he went out on the weekend and got really drunk and was surrounded by a group of friends, got into a fight, got arrested, was taken home by the police, and then experienced a lot of shame. And instead of, you know, he said to me yesterday, I wanted to kill myself. I was like, I'm doing all this amazing work. He's, you know, helping men express themselves. He's really like opening himself up, being able to talk about what's going on with him. And then he has one night where his emotions get the better of him because he has been told as a man that he shouldn't be expressing anger because, you know, it's frowned on. If you're an angry person in society, then there's something wrong with you. And if you're a sad man, then you're weak. And so he got angry and then he shamed himself and then he got shamed by policemen and friends. You know, what's wrong with you? Why can't you keep it all under control? And so he jumped onto this group called BestLife that we created, and he shared, I really fucked up and I feel so shit about it. And I just need people in my life that'll hear me for that. And then he had all these people come in. But what I spoke to him about yesterday was, number one, you set yourself up for that shame. And I just said, I'm proud of you. You are not someone who's ever been able to like go through a scenario like that where you get angry and you get into a fight and you get arrested. Usually you sit in that for a couple of weeks because of the shame. Instead, you went and told everyone that you fucked up. I fucked up and I need help. Someone help me. And then you got on the phone to me, and instead of, I'm not going to sit here and act like you're a victim. You're not. You're someone out there making a difference and you got upset. So what? So it's like, how do we be like that with the people in our lives? When someone gets frustrated or upset, because they've probably shamed themselves already. So how do we then go, sure, you got angry at me. You were like throwing punches. That's not who you really are, though. So now it's like the discovery of how do we be like that without the people in our lives? How do we be okay with when people are frustrated, when they are angry? Because we're probably going to get triggered. Yeah, Taylor?
It's just going in with the mentality that there's nothing wrong here.
Mm.
Like, you are a human being.
Mm.
You did this. Like, and also just like you've done it, and making someone feel bad about something that they've done doesn't undo it. So like, just fucking don't let them feel bad.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing, like, after the fact, there's nothing you can do to make it not have happened.
Yeah.
And now there's just dealing with everything moving forward.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it's interesting said than done too, by the way. You know,
100%.
my brother tells me that stuff and I cry. I have a human reaction. I got so sad. I got sad that he's suffering in a way, and no matter what I do or say, it makes no difference because it's his journey. So I got sad, and then I just acknowledged it, and I went, I know that you're a powerful human being, and it still makes me sad. It still affects me, but I'm not going to make you feel bad for it. And this is the same too. Like, you know, Jess and I, we expand a lot together, right? We work together, we live together, we see each other a lot. And, you know, there was one day she'd really expressed herself. She'd really expressed herself in her sadness, her anger, her frustration. And I wasn't prepared for it. I was like, even with all the work that I've done, I'm not bulletproof. Someone that I love is sad, frustrated, and like really angry. And my first reaction is like tears. Just, I can't stop the tears. And then, you know, in her shame, she then goes, you're making it all about you. You know, why can't you just, don't cry, this isn't about you. And then it becomes like two human beings that are experiencing shame for emotions that aren't normal to express, even if we've done all this work. Two human beings like trying to figure out how to have these emotions, not experience shame, be there for each other. And it was like, this isn't working. We both left the room, you know, and within a couple of hours had come back and been like, wow, that's what it looks like to have a shitstorm. And instead of being like, you made me sad, you can't talk to me like that, it's not okay, you know, blah. And then her being like, you can't hold me, you can't, blah. Instead, it was like, I really got to see how upset and frustrated you are. And it has absolutely nothing to do with me. And you are probably experiencing shame for having experienced that in the first place. And like, you know, the yelling and the tears and all the, you know, And when we really go there with our expression and someone can't be with it, there's more shame. So it's okay, by the way, if you can't be with that kind of expression, because we're not taught to be able to be with that expression in life. We can practice and we can learn it and we can allow it and experience it more and more, not to become bulletproof, but so that people in our lives really have that safe space. It doesn't mean it's never going to affect you though, because it is, because you're a human being too, you're not a fucking robot. So it's like, how do we be with all of it? Because that's when the real freedom is when someone can be yelling at you, you can be crying, and then there's this observer mind in both of you that goes, this is just a beautiful storm and it will pass. There's no shame about a storm, it just happens. So that's what I'm taking away from this conversation. There's all sides to it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with you. And there's nothing wrong with anybody else. And we all do really shit things sometimes.
We do.
And yeah, there's things that we probably shouldn't do.
No shouldn'ts and shoulds. Screw that. We do them.
You're talking to the ending human trafficking girl. There's some things we can do, guys. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Right? But once it's done, and then we deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Not look at how to have it prevented. We deal with the what's so right now.
Yeah. And if we don't deal with the shame, then violence won't end.
Yeah.
Because there's so much not spoken about. Like, I'm totally tailored the end human trafficking and ending all violence. Like, if we don't talk about shame and you know, amazing people like you, Emily, don't have these conversations online about it, nothing's going to shift.
No.
We can only own it for ourselves. We can't own it for other people.
Yeah, I could do an entire program on shame that lasts a couple of months. There's so much embedded in it. And I just want to say too, before we start to wrap it up, but it's like, I even know for myself, it starts with me. Shame exists over here with me. That's why it exists in my reality, because I'm creating it. And I'm not doing it intentionally, but I get to own that if I'm a human being that experiences emotions and has a reality that gets created based on, you know, what I say, so language being a big part of that creation. And if I'm more and more and more and more and more aware of the things that I'm hearing and saying and how they're experienced as shame over here with me and other people, then I can start to drastically change, you know, how I perceive shame, which also then gives an access for other people to do the same. So I know that that's quite the Da Vinci Code in what I just said, but ultimately it's not even how do we, just let's all just start to notice when we're in the experience of shame. And then what do we do with that? When we notice it, what do we do with that? Do we communicate it? Do we really feel it? You know, there's all these different modalities that say you should do this. I don't think there's one answer. I think they all exist for a reason. In embodiment work, where does the shame exist? Can you point to it in your body? And some people will say it's in my heart. Okay, really feel that. What does it feel like? What does it look like? What's the color? These are all accesses to being able to express shame. You know, one of my favorites is communication. I look over to Jess now and she's giving me feedback. And even before I say anything, Jess goes, this isn't personal. I don't want to upset you right now. This is just an insight into something I'm noticing, and it has nothing to do with you, but you just happen to be the person doing the task. So don't feel shame. Don't get upset. And if you are experiencing that, we'll talk about it later. Because she knows once that I'm triggered, I'm out. I'm like, I can't hear it. So it's true. It's true. My humanity takes me out. It's like, fuck that bitch. And literally for a couple of minutes while I'm in it, in the like the shame, I'm just gonna give it like some identity, so like the shame. I'm gonna, it's got its own little like in its little cage, the shame rat. While I'm in that, like that scarcity mind, I can't hear anything.
I like to slam doors in people's faces when they shame me, when I experience shame.
Yeah.
I'm a bit more covert than that, ladies. I hate to break it to you.
What'd you say, Marilyn? You're covert. You're more covert.
I'm rather more covert than that. I don't like shame them after the fact by walking off and storming out and never coming back.
Yeah.
I do that too.
We'll have our own version of it. You know, when
I'm a nasty bitch.
Yeah, I go quiet. That's how I experience shame. I go, nothing I have to say right now is worth saying, is what I tell myself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's all these different modalities, but really it's like because I'm clear it's an experience over here with us. And then when someone else is shamed and they don't have access to this kind of awareness, how can we be for those people now? First thing that comes to mind for me is compassionate. It's like, wow, I really get what that's like. I really get when someone says something and you instantly think that you're not worthy. So instead of getting angry at them for experiencing shame and lashing out, it's like just owning that they experienced that. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to wrap it up.
All right.
Thank you so much, ladies. This was an epic conversation. And I know that we could talk for hours. Thank you, Kelsey, for coming on. You have so many amazing comments, and I apologize that we didn't get through all of them, but she's just epic. She comes on every time. And anyone else that's watched in the background but hasn't commented, it's okay. You didn't have to. I hope that you got some value.
Please don't feel ashamed that you didn't comment.
That's it. If you're replaying this and all of a sudden you go, this is too much, and you sign off, no worries. I get it. So thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Taylor, for exploring this conversation about shamed expressions with me. Far out. I got so much for myself tonight about my own experience of shame. And you know what's really left for me? I have so much compassion for my own my humanity. I am someone who suppresses frustration and anger. And instead of being able to just say to someone, I'm really angry right now, and not have it directed at them and work through it, is a massive breakthrough. And so I think that's going to be a huge takeaway for me, especially considering that I've just taken on owning a lot of money in the next couple of months. And that's going to take some really bold actions. So, yeah. And not having any shame around earning money.
I had a breakthrough in that today.
Exciting. So, to wrap this up, go and check Taylor out. Go and check Marilyn out. Marilyn is Miri on Facebook. They're both up to some amazing things. And Tune in for Tuesdays Conscious Conversations at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. It's a different topic every week, and these are just conversations to explore humanity. So thank you for joining me, ladies, and that's it for tonight. Mwah! Big love to everybody.